good day out there to all my listeners. I'd like to welcome you to Is Your Way in Your Way podcast. And many of you know that's the title of my book. And for these new listeners out here, let me kind of share with you what this podcast is all about. It's actually about us being in our way. You know, you have goals and you have dreams, you have passions, you have so many things that you'd like to accomplish that you've not been able to. There's some things that you have, but there's some things that you're stuck. It could be wanting a promotion, could be having a talk show, could be writing a book, could be speaking on a stage. It could be a number of things. And I believe whatever it is that has you stuck, that you are blocking pursuing your purpose. And so today, well, first of all, many of you are aware that we talk about topics related to personal and business development. And today, our topic is going to be how could you live your best life using the ACE model? And who better to share this with us is Dr. Michelle Maidenberg. Good day, Doctor. I'm going to call you Dr. Michelle.
That is
How
nice
you
to meet you. Nice to meet
Yeah.
everybody. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I'm so glad that you're here. Before we get started delving into what we're going to talk about, I just want to read your bio so my listeners will get a better understanding of what Dr. Michelle is all about. Today on Is Your Way in Your Way, I'm going to welcome you, Michelle Maidenberg, a highly accomplished therapist and author. She maintains a private practice in Harrison, New York, and co-founded Through My Eyes, which I found so interesting. It's a nonprofit offering video legacies for the chronically ill as an adjunct faculty member at New York University. She teaches mindfulness practice, and her extensive training includes CBT, ACT, and EMDR. Now, those are some acronyms that we may get to before we end our show today. But anyway, she is an award-winning book, Free Your Child from Overeating and Ace Your Life, provide invaluable insights into mental health and personal growth. She's a prolific writer and speaker, and she has been featured in major media outlets and delivered a powerful TED Talk on numerous roles and contributions in the field. Join me, everyone, and let's, as Michelle shares her expertise and actionable strategies to help us overcome barriers. And I say us because I'm included in it. Although I wrote the book, Is Your Way in Your Way, I am a work in progress, so it takes time. But yet she's going to share some tools that's going to help us overcome some of those barriers that has us stuck. So again, welcome to Is Your Way in Your Way, Dr. Michelle.
Thank
Dr.
you for having me.
Michelle, could you share with us your backstory before you got into the clinical field?
Sure. Yeah, there's a long backstory.
Oh, okay.
So I think we all have backstories, right?
Yeah.
It's the reason we do what we're doing, and we're so passionate about it.
Mhm.
So, I came from intergenerational trauma, I'll call it.
Okay.
And my parents married when they were extremely young. My mother was 18, my father was 19, and they had me a year later. And then I had a brother who was born about, 13 months after I was. But, they divorced when I was 3, which is, fairly young. And, fast forward, I went to 5 different elementary schools. I was constantly back and forth. There was a lot of turbulence, let's call it, and instability. There was also some, substance use and abuse, I would call it, over the years, my family. And, a lot, like I said, a lot of instability. And I felt like an old soul, if you want to call it. I had the wherewithal and the understanding that like something wasn't quite right. But I did feel very alone. I did feel very isolated in my thoughts and feelings. I didn't really feel attended to or heard. And it really led me to be a healer, quite honestly. I found myself in that role. I found myself always in that role, listening to people, helping people, guiding people. And I'm an empath by nature. So I feel feelings on a really intense level. And when somebody goes through an experience, I feel as if I'm going through it myself. That's how intensely I feel feelings. So
Mm-hmm.
I was in tune with that since I was really young. And like I said, I felt like an old soul, like I almost was observing the world and saying, like, something's not right here. What's going on?
Right.
I remember when I was little, I remember really being little, I remember hugging my teddy bear and saying, like, this too shall pass,
Yes.
and I'm going to have my own life. So I remember really tapping into my resilience when I was really young.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember having the wherewithal with recognizing that things will be different for me in the future.
Mm.
So, and I was also very resourceful. That was the other thing.
Yeah.
I always gravitated towards older women, and I
Mhm.
always had mentors and people who took an interest in me and paid attention to me. And, that was really important. It made me feel understood. It made me feel loved. It made me feel likable, all those lovely things.
Mm.
Contributed to my self-confidence for sure.
Right. That's very interesting because I felt the same way in many instances, being that old soul and being attracted to older women. So it's just great to connect with someone that felt the same
Yeah.
way. So I really, really get it. And
Yeah.
and you already answered the question. I was curious to what triggered you to do this work, but now I see, because a lot of our past has to do with our future, and I always say, from pain to purpose. We can actually use those what I call testimonies, to be a blessing and to help other people in
Mhm.
the world. So that's how I see you, and I think that's great, because we're going to talk about, and I
Mhm.
hear you an expert in emotional avoidance. And we
Yes.
all have emotions, and I think a lot of the emotions that we have, it enables us to get in our way. So this is just a great opportunity for you to, let's talk about this. And I'm certain that you're going to provide some practical tips to help us all get out of our way and start pursuing our purpose. How does one define emotional avoidance?
So, our brains are wired to protect us from danger and discomfort. And
Hmm.
it's literally wired that way, our neurophysiology.
Hmm.
And, keep in mind when I say danger, it's perceived danger.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll give you an example because I just had somebody leave my office
Okay.
and she's getting ready to have a procedure. And it has, to do with fertility and other things.
Hmm.
And, you know, she has to do a couple of rounds of this particular procedure.
Right. Hmm.
And, you know, this last time she did it, and she has to go through a couple of more rounds.
Right.
But the last time she did it, and she's very, again, a lot of what helps her to feel very grounded and present is when she gets heard and she gets her needs met, because being in control and having control over her body is really
Hmm.
important to her
Yeah.
because of her own history.
Sure.
So this last procedure that she had, they basically did something without her consent when she made it very explicitly clear to them what she wanted.
Right.
And so she's having a lot of anxiety, which you could imagine, and
Sure.
residual resistance, right?
Right.
Because of fear of it happening again, even though she did assert herself. It's not as if she didn't assert herself. She did. She actually
Yeah.
did. But her
Hmm.
needs were still not met. So now she's going into these additional procedures with a lot of trepidation, which
Yeah.
is completely understandable.
Yeah.
So when we were doing a little bit of, what I call a float back, what it really kind of hit up against was when she was a kid, she was constantly forced to do things she didn't want to do.
Hmm.
She had memories of places that she was forced to go to, things she needed to participate in as a kid that her
Yeah.
parents forced her to. And she was so incredibly distressed, and
Mhm.
suffered in these
Mhm.
moments.
Yeah.
And again, our brain remembers, right? Because I had her tap into what was going on for her viscerally, what was going for her somatically. And she kind of actually described feeling her body very constricted right now here. And I said, bring back a memory when your body felt similarly. And it went back to what I'm talking about. And, again, as we proceeded, it was perfectly clear that her body was remembering all the
Mhm.
times when she felt so helpless and she couldn't
Mhm.
have no choice. She didn't have choices and she couldn't do anything about it. Well, guess what? She's an adult now. And
Mm.
even though she actually, and I validated this for her, even though she did express herself,
Mhm.
did advocate for herself, and the outcome was still negative, she still has choices going forward,
Yeah.
right? Whether
Mhm.
it's, I said, what choices do you have? And she said, well, I could micromanage the doctor. She happens to be in the medical profession herself. So she's
Mhm.
aware of
Sure.
procedure, what needs to happen. She's like, I could micromanage, the doctor. And I was like, okay, that's a choice. She said I could go to another place to get the
Mhm.
procedure done. I mean, there's options,
Yeah. Why?
She's not that kid.
Right. Yes.
She's not that kid anymore. So
Mhm.
anyway, our brain, we avoid emotions, right?
Mhm.
And doing things and being part of things because our brain gets in the way, like you said, and we avoid the negative emotions. So instead of kind of recognizing that she was avoiding the fear, the hopelessness, the helplessness, whatever was coming up, she was just being resistant,
Mhm.
right?
Okay.
And once she was able to tap into the actual underlying feelings that was impacting her behavior, right? She was able to see and feel empowered and feel self-efficacy so that she can actually move forward in an empowered way.
Mhm. Mhm. And I remember reading that you said we should not try to avoid our emotions.
Yeah, and it's so easy to do that
Yeah.
because brain also has all these lovely strategies like distracting, denying, right?
Mhm.
So many different
Mhm.
things our brain does in order, right, to avoid the discomfort. And we
Mhm.
fall a little bit into this pit because it becomes this habit also,
Right. Right.
right?
Mhm.
I mean, I speak to so many people and I say to them, well, you're in a lot of distress. Do you want to keep on doing the same behavior? Right. And you say to yourself, why do people continue the same patterns of behavior when it's not working for them? That makes no sense.
Right. Right.
There's a reason for it because our brain takes the path of least resistance
Mhm.
and it really just gravitates to what's familiar and comfortable and towards those neural pathways, and it avoids the discomfort. It avoids anger, sadness, frustration,
Mhm.
disappointment, like all of the things that just make us feel so uncomfortable in our bodies.
Right. Exactly. So do you have like well, let me ask you this because I think it's going to come into this. I want to talk about your ACE method, and
Mhm.
that's actually part of the title, that
Yeah.
how we could live our best life using that model. Explain
Mhm.
that to us.
Okay. So I wrote a book called Ace Your
Mhm.
Life, Unleash Your Best Self and Live the Life You Want. And it's predicated under ACE, which is acceptance, compassion, and empowerment.
Mhm.
So the way that I constructed the book, which is the way that I teach people and guide people to live their best life, is really predicated. One is understanding their neurobiology. It's
Okay.
very, very important for us to understand neurobiology. And I spend like a chapter reviewing what our brain does and how it functions, because that's
Oh,
really critical. It's
okay.
really, really critical because we could catch it when it's happening in the moment. We've up, there it goes, right?
Uh-huh.
Also connecting to our core values. So
Mhm.
that's the second chapter. We really need to be grounded in what is truly important to us so that we sustain behavior and we also move and align with our values. And people tell me, they could try to convince me, oh, I know what my values are,
Yeah,
And then when we get to the root of it, most people actually don't know what their core values are.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Mhm.
And then, the acceptance, compassion, empowerment, again, that sounds very flowery and people are like, oh, how am I supposed to do that? But I do spend a lot of time in the first parts of each chapters talking about the barriers
Mhm.
because I cannot stress how many barriers there are in terms of our being our best self. There are
Mm.
barriers social culturally, based on again, our race, religion, how we were raised, our genetics, our physiology, and I could go on and on and on.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are
Mhm.
so many barriers that get in the way of us really noticing ourselves, of us having self-compassion and empowering ourselves to actually take action on behalf of our values.
Mm.
So there is barriers to acceptance, there's barriers to compassion, there's barriers to empowerment. We really need to know what they are so we can actually call ourselves out on it. And
Right.
then how to integrate the skills And then I end each chapter with a guided meditation
Mm.
with a QR scan, which you could, download and integrate the information. But there are skills all along the way. The nice thing about it, I feel, is that you could kind of weave in and out of kind of the skills. So
Mm-hmm.
some people have a little bit more challenge with self-compassion than they do with self-acceptance,
Mm.
Some people, and again, along our path, depending on what adversity we're going through, right, or
Yeah.
challenge,
Yeah.
and even in terms of our maturity and our development,
Yeah.
things are always changing. So, just another example, like, listen, the time that we struggle socially, let's say, or to kind of find ourselves is usually about middle school, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
When I ask people, like, would you ever want to go back to middle school? They're like, no way.
Yeah.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because socially, like, you kind of wanted to be like everybody else, but you wanted to be, like nobody else. And you just feel
Mm-hmm.
so insecure and uncomfortable trying to really weave yourself in and out of your own, like, confidence. Um, but I feel like, and this happened to me just the other week where I had to really sit down and think about what's important to me and how I want to be spending my time, because right
Mm-hmm.
now my time is so precious and it's so limited
Yeah.
that, my relationships, I believe in putting in a lot of effort into my relationships, the ones
Mm-hmm.
that are formative and important to me,
Right.
but I don't have the time to put it into all relationships. I just don't.
Right.
So I
Mm-hmm.
have to be selective, and I have to be very cognizant of really where I want to put my attention and effort and time. And
Mm-hmm.
I had to have a real sit down with myself and really think about that, because as I'm aging and as I'm
Right.
developing, I'm
Right.
maturing, that's changed.
Right.
It's really changed, because
Mm-hmm.
things that were important to me 10 years ago are very different than what's important to me today. Very
That's
different.
that's true.
Yeah.
You talked about the core values and how a lot of people don't know what they are. Why do you think that is?
Because if I asked you, like, what's important to you, okay,
Mm-hmm.
you could
Mm-hmm.
rattle off, my family, my friends,
Right.
whatever. But then if I ask you, like, what action are you willing to take on a daily basis to lean into that value? That's a whole
Mhm.
different ball of wax.
Okay.
Yeah. And, I was doing a workshop, and one of the audience members, they're like, oh, I know what my core values
Mm-hmm.
are, whatever. And then she started talking and she thought it was something. And I said, what? Let's go a little deeper.
Uh-huh.
Why is that important to you? And she
Mm-hmm.
again gave me a very superficial answer. And I said, no, no, why is that important to you? And when it came down to it, what it came down to was her dignity and self respect.
Mm.
But
Okay.
she wasn't thinking about it that way. She was
Sure.
thinking about something she needs to do, in order to feel happy, and I was like, but that's not really what it is.
Right.
Because once you do that thing, then what? Then what happens? Then how do you decide what you're going to do next?
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
when you understand that it's dignity and self-respect, okay, then we have a set of values by which, right, to guide your actions.
Right. And do you find that a lot of this definitely comes from childhood?
Our child, I mean, I can't even say. I mean, I know you asked me before why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I came from a very, very traumatized family legacy,
Yeah.
and I heard stories about wars, concentration camps, murder,
Mm-hmm.
and atrocity since I was a little tiny child.
Okay.
Now, as a child, I thought it was just a story. I
Right.
didn't I didn't understand, like, the significance of it. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't understand what trauma was. I didn't understand, any of it.
Right.
But I realize now as an adult that hearing those stories, especially being an empath that I am,
Yes.
I must have been so incredibly impacted emotionally by hearing those stories more than I could ever even imagine.
Right.
And it
Mm-hmm.
had to have and I believe I owe it to my grandmother, one particular grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
because she was the only one that was open enough and, to share those stories, because the others were so traumatized they couldn't even speak of it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but she did, and she would tell me explicitly, stories about the war and all of that. And I know that I felt the need to embrace her and to show her compassion and to want to help her. And I felt so deeply for her pain and for her suffering
Yeah.
in a way that I didn't even realize. I had
Yeah.
no clue.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. I'm thinking when I think that about my listeners and how many of them want to pursue their passion, but they just don't have that commitment. They have this desire, but yet they're not committed to it. And it made me think about like my book, for example. It took me years to write a book. That was something that I always wanted to do because I used to write all the time as a little girl. And as I started writing the book, it took me longer because I was exposing myself. And I didn't want to expose myself because, back in my mom said, no, don't tell the family secrets. Don't do this. And I've really struggled with that. And the way that I got over it was this I know will bless other people. So this made me put things in the book. I didn't put everything, but I put enough in there for it to resonate. And how many people have said, wow, this sounds just like me. So I'm just saying that because that enabled me to pivot. It took a while, but I remember it's not just about me.
Yeah.
It's about serving other people. And so that was a pivotal moment for me, understanding. And I think for my listeners, there's certain things they want to do. Like there's some that want to be promoted.
Sure.
Forgiveness is another one. They know they should be forgiving somebody, but they just can't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a lot of things like that.
Well,
Um, yeah,
I'll give you an example because I came up with a list just to piggyback what you're saying of people who live empowered lives. Like
right.
what, because there are characteristics we need to have in order to commit to living empowering lives. And what does it mean to living, what does it mean to be empowered? It
Yes.
means doing the things you want to be doing in order to live your best life. That's what it is.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And one of the things that you just kind of spoke to is being comfortable with being uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the moments that you were kind of maybe tapping into these family secrets
Yeah.
or your vulnerability
Right.
or the rawness of exposing yourself to others or whatever the case is,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You did it incrementally, you did it compassionately, it sounds like,
Mm-hmm.
but you also did it mindfully,
Right. Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So, sort of what we have to do, and I made a list, I have like a list of 10 different characteristics, right? But these are the things that I share with others
Mm-hmm.
in order to have that mindset. Like you need to accept and face adversity, right? No matter how challenging it is.
Right.
And you have to commit to that.
Right.
Not just give up and say, oh, I can't do this anymore. It's too hard. Okay. Then what do I need to do in order to accomplish? Do I need to take it in increments? Do I need to
Mm-hmm.
do I need to slow down? Do I
Mm-hmm.
need to partner up with somebody? Do I, if A is not working, go to B, C, D, E, keep on going down the
Yeah.
alphabet, but
Yeah.
don't give up, right?
Right.
Just
Right.
like if you want to exercise, you
Mm-hmm.
can't say to me, oh, I tried this and this and I didn't like it.
Right.
No, no. Like find the thing you like.
Yes.
And even if you have to go through like 50 iterations,
Mm-hmm.
find the thing you like,
Right.
right? You
Mm-hmm.
know, so that's just like one skill that I teach in terms of mindset around empowering yourself, how to keep a habit. So like also to just, like when I ask people, how many of you have changed behavior, a habit? And like everybody's hands go up when I do a workshop. And I'll say to them, how many of you have sustained it over time?
Mm-hmm.
Hands go down.
Mm-hmm.
So I find because there's so many resources out there, we know how to do things. We don't know how to sustain it because that's when the psychological, emotional kind of kicks in
Right.
and sabotages us,
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
right?
Do you share ways to sustain it, or is it that you have to really want to sustain it? You know, is it that commitment, it reminds me of New Year's. New Year's Day, everybody makes a resolution. I'm going to do
Yeah,
this. I'm going to do that, and they
yeah,
don't do it. Like 80%
yeah,
of the people don't even do it.
that's true. That's true.
Right.
So again, I came up and this is all in my empowerment chapter, by the way, just so you
Okay.
know, because this is about like this, kind of the behavior sticking. But I'll show you a piece of paper because I have it just in front of me. Like I
Sure.
came up, whoops, I came up with
Okay.
like this list on
Uh-huh.
what you need to do to work on habits.
Okay.
And there's all, like, if you see here, right, there's 4, 5, 6, there's 18 different
Uh-huh.
little tidbits I give on how to sustain this kind of habit.
Right.
But it's not, like we'd like to believe, oh, I want to change my habit.
Yeah.
Poof, it's going to just happen. No, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
Like, if that were the case, everyone would be doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
not everyone's doing it because it's hard work. Now, I don't know about you, but anything that I really wanted in life that was important to me, I had to put a lot of time, effort, and persistence into.
Right.
I don't care if it was my education, my parenting, my relationships, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing comes just because,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
haphazardly. So, I literally listed here 18 different things that one needs to be doing in order to create habits and to sustain
Okay.
habits.
And
And
and that's in your book.
yeah, all of these things. Again, I have so many
Okay.
skills and
Tools.
tips.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a chock full.
Right.
There's so many different ways to cultivate it significantly. Yeah.
Okay. Um, we could talk. I could talk to you for hours, but but
I
but
know.
in your profession, people talk to you for hours. So, but
Yes,
I
we
have
do.
one last question that I think this could help my listeners.
Sure.
Any practical tips for my listeners on tangible strategies and skills they can use every day?
The whole book is about strategies you could use every day. But
Okay.
I'll just give one because, the one that sticks out for me right now. There's all this hype about mindfulness and meditative practice
Yeah.
and all lovely stuff. And I actually, I have a YouTube channel and I publish a new guided meditation every Thursday morning at 11 a.m.
Okay.
Eastern time. Because I am a big proponent of mindfulness practice. And I also teach a mindfulness practice class at NYU. And it's really about being in the present moment.
Mm,
Our minds are chronically and consistently in the past, where there's regret and guilt and
yeah.
shame, or in the future, which is worry. And
Yes.
we're never really here. Like I know what's happening right here in the moment as I'm talking to you. I don't know what's going to happen in 5 minutes from now. I
Exactly.
don't know what's going to happen in an hour from now. I,
Mm-hmm.
I could tell you from being in my practice, talking to people, and my lifelong, dedication and mission towards like helping people, things happen unexpectedly. Things happen that are out of our control.
Yeah,
We could plan from today until tomorrow,
that's
but it
right.
doesn't always work out the way we planned.
That's
And
right.
sometimes it has nothing to do with what we did or what we didn't do.
Mm-hmm.
And we really have to take every moment of our lives seriously and really be our best self because we don't have time to waste, not even a moment. I mean, I was
Exactly.
just talking to somebody because I see sometimes people are like, oh, I'm going to travel. I'm going to do this, when I'm so and so age. And I can't tell you, and it's sad to say this. I've had in my practice a number of people who've waited and then it never happened because their partner got sick
Mm-hmm.
or they
Mm-hmm.
were injured or even worse than that, you could imagine.
Right. Exactly. That's right.
And I sit there and I'm not saying that, like live each moment, yes, leave each moment as your last, but you also have to be kind of mindful about like, again, finances and other things that are important in life, right? You have to think
Right.
about your future. But living your best life
Mm-hmm.
means satisfaction and contentment. Okay. It means really living according to your values every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And and there's nothing more satisfying than that. I could tell you. There's nothing. Yesterday, I got this like incredible email from somebody because they've been doing my guided meditations and they were
Mm-hmm.
injured, unfortunately. It was a college student who was a wrestler who was injured.
Uh-huh.
And he spoke about how I've helped him so much, and he got through his injury because of like
Meditation.
committing to the practice.
Wow.
And if I tell you, I sat in my chair for literally, and I gave that gift to myself. I
Yeah.
sat in my chair for 5 minutes. I closed my eyes and I meditated on that, on gratitude for helping others and how appreciative I am that the higher power gave me that
Yeah.
skill, and how much I love going into work every day and doing the work that I do, that I have the ability to do that. Like, I appreciate that so much.
It's like a healing.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Not the boast, but just a healing. They're helping you heal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to know how, please share with my listeners how they could get in touch with you.
Sure. So I'm going to just show my book, which is that. It's
Okay.
Unleash Your Best Self, and it's my colors, so I love it.
Mm-hmm.
The best place is my website. It's my full name. It's Michelle with 2 L's, Maidenberg, Maidenberg. It's one strand.com. It has, it has my blogs. I also write for Psychology Today. I'm a blogger for them. So about monthly, I write an article, and it's always on, again, self-help or parenting or something that's going on currently, in the media or whatever. But so people, and they usually have a lot of tips and skills also in them. So on my website has all the information about me. You can find it.
Okay. Well, I have enjoyed this conversation, and to me, it's just too short, but that's how it is. And I see you as a member of my tribe, because that's my passion, is to empower individuals to start living their best life, because there's so many people that have gone on their way. They just have so many regrets, and I just don't want them to have those regrets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
We are simpatico.
Exactly. So thanks again, my listeners. As I say bye for now, and I'd like to thank Dr. Michelle for her support with this issue. And please subscribe to this channel. And if there's this particular episode that has really resonated with you, please share it with that individual. Thanks so much. Bye for now. And thank you, Dr. Michelle. Bye for now.
Bye.